And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Mastermind here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. My name is Kidi Obiawadu, aka The Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East African time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Sunday, January the 4th, 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livinginblack.com. Now, let me bring into the conversation our panel for today. Baba Junius, we have you in the house. Aquaba, welcome, Baba Junius.
Madasi, thank you for the invitation. Good to be
It's
here.
always it's a pleasure to have you in the house. Brother Dwara, we have you checking in with us as well. Let me just add you to the screen, add to the stage. Brother Dwara, that invisible brother who sits right between you and I, Baba Junius.
Yeah, it's just like he's like intuition. You can't see it, but it's always profound.
That's right.
You Babas are too kind. I appreciate that. Shikamoni to you both. Ubuntu Ma to the global LIB radio family.
That's right. That's right. Obviously, we have a very major breakthrough development to put on the table for today. Donald Trump and his influence over the entire U.S. government. And I do not dismiss the entire U.S. government and the U.S. people for the situation that we are going through today. Of course, the U.S. has invaded Venezuela, captured, kidnapped the president and his wife, and now the country is in a dilemma, a very complex dilemma. Where do we begin today's discussion?
Question, why do you say the United States is in a dilemma when this is a continuation of a pattern that we've seen over and over for the past, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, I think you're making a great point. I did look at the number of U.S. interventions and regime changes since the end of World War II, and it is a very long list, at least 72, and that's just through 1989. And then from 1989, it appears there are over 100 of these. So you make a good point. I stand corrected.
Well, it's the empire flexing its muscles on behalf of its patrons, in this case, the oil industry and the Rothschild family. And so the people who don't understand geopolitics and don't understand the things that we're talking about will fall for the okie doke. Will fall for the okie doke about this is about drugs, when in fact there have been no evidence presented that Maduro was engaged in drug trafficking. If Trump wanted to stop global drug trafficking or drug trafficking in this hemisphere, he'd bomb the CIA. So that's some more of this, and then of course they tied in with narco terrorism. So that's the main thing that they have to keep in, because we've been conditioned to react to the word terrorism just like Pavlovian dogs. So again, it's no different than what we've seen, and it's just as glaring and as what they did to Manuel Noriega, George H.W. Bush, It's no different than what they did to Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. Just that they killed them in broad daylight. So, and the beat goes on, as Roberta Flack sang in her song. Business goes on as usual.
Juare, I'm sure you do want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I think Baba Junius is absolutely correct. I wholeheartedly agree. This is just a continuation of thuggery and global gangsterism that has been the mindset of these people of the battle axe since they got caught behind that wall of ice during the Glacial 2 worm period.
In weighing in on the events that took place, Saturday morning, Friday night, I am very reluctant to say anything. For one, nothing I will say has not been said already. And Junius, I think your statement stands very well for all of us here. But the rhetoric goes on and on and on. And if you just want to search for the rhetoric, you're going to find it everywhere, everywhere. I did search for things such as high cost of over 100 cases of covert regime change and destabilization. And it said that a Lindsay O'Rourke put together a study that was up to from World War II, the end of World War II, to 1989. And in her study, she documented 64 covert interventions for regime change by the U.S. 1947 to 1989. And if we continue that up to date, it would be well over 100 such attempts by now. And insofar as the oil, insofar as the charge of cocaine trafficking, I agree with you, Baba Junius, that don't look for these cocaine traffickers elsewhere bringing cocaine into the United States unless you first remove the internal contributors to this crisis. And we do know evidence came out during the what was it called when the guy
Contra scandal.
Yeah, and then the CIA.
Oliver North.
Yeah, well, they were all, those were all connected.
There was a book. What was that operation called?
The only book that I can think of is Dark Alliance by Gary Webb.
That's it.
Yeah.
Dark Alliance by Gary Webb. And I apologize for forgetting his name. He was a very, very important character. And he was apparently assassinated for his work, Dark Alliance. But let us remember that just recently, Donald Trump pardoned the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted, jailed for drug trafficking in the United States, sentenced to 45 years in federal prison for conspiring to import an estimated 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. from Honduras. He received millions in bribes from drug traffickers, including $1 million bribe from Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. And on December 1st, 2025, about exactly 1 month before going after Maduro, President Donald Trump granted Hernandez a full pardon, leading to his release from prison. Now, what's up with that?
Well, this all depends on who is behind that, who the people who are pushing for and promoting for these pardons. We've seen that, or what the Trump and his family can get out of it, because the grift is off the chart. I mean, they're making Joe Biden look like a piker. They're making Obama look like he's not even in their class, and he's not. You know, they don't come close to the Bush family, but what they're doing is just mind-boggling in terms of just the overt and the covert corruption that is going on here. And when we talk about the toppling of this uh, regime, we have to go back and look at what's going on around the world. So you look at Ukraine, and I ask our viewers and listeners to go back and look at the leaked conversation between Victoria Nuland and the guy from the State Department, where they brag about how they spent $5 billion to topple the government in Ukraine. And they were talking about which person out there they were going to use as the comprador and puppet. So the stuff in Ukraine really had nothing to do with the Russian invasion, the special military operation that the Russians call it. It goes back to the color revolutions that were spreading all over Eastern Europe and parts of Europe and elsewhere around the world. They released information. They didn't go into it in detail. Trump was talking about the U.S. military, but it was brought out in the media briefly and very on a limited fashion that the CIA was on the ground. So when the CIA is on the ground, you know that they're doing pre-op preparation and they're doing post-op. They're doing the operation itself, helping coordinate that. Then they're doing the post-op psyop that you see with all these rallies with the people with the flags cheering and supposedly being a jubilation that this event happened, when in fact it's all a setup, just like it was a setup with Saddam Hussein, what they did after they toppled him. So once you see their playbook, they just use variations of the same strategies and options.
Yeah, the U.S. definitely was a part of a regime change in Ukraine. They don't want to admit that. They don't, or they seem to want to forget it, even though it's not buried very deep. It was a part of regime change in Ukraine that then compelled the Russian leader to invade Ukraine for whatever reasons and ends that they deemed necessary. They did not want to be surrounded by another hostile NATO base.
Well, in addition to that, it wasn't just the fact that the West reneged on their promise about not expanding NATO. Once the regime was changed in Ukraine, the neo-Nazis became emboldened, and they started attacking primarily the provinces that still had maintained their Russian culture. They spoke the Russian language. They had ethnic ties to Russia, and they reached out to the Russians to say, hey, look, give us some help. And originally they didn't do it. But finally it got so bad where the neo-Nazis were just out now bombing them and just slaughtering them. So that's when Putin intervened, because it was tied to the NATO situation. And, the West still talks about how Putin annexed Crimea. The Crimean people voted.
Yeah, they held a plebiscite.
Yeah, they wanted to go back to the Russian Federation. And so I'm predicting the next, from now on in 2026, you're going to see a ramp up of propaganda, number one, to justify this, and we're seeing it already, but also to justify the coming action that they're going to take against Iran.
Dwara, did you want to respond?
No, I think you both summed it up quite well.
Okay.
It's these war games, and I agree with Baba Junius that the CIA is definitely behind the scenes. I was just looking up that character Ryan Ruth in the background, and the one who allegedly, well, actually, he was convicted of that, of trying to assassinate President Trump. So yeah, he was one of those agitprop type of guys in Ukraine, rallying around, taking photos, and making it seem like there was a lot going on. It's very interesting what goes on behind the scenes. And Amos Wilson always reminded us that we must study military science. We must study the adversary.
Hmm. The reason I am so reluctant to talk about this, one, everything that I would say has been said so many times. Our listening audience could go to any one of dozens and dozens of websites and be able to get the story. But the main reason I don't want to talk about it is because I'm not going to do nothing about it. I'm not going to do anything about it other than
Well,
rhetoric, other than the
well,
tiny little propaganda value that LAB radio has.
Mhm.
I want to use this year, 2026, in the Gregorian calendar to forward something that I can do something about. Now we got to figure out, what can we do? LAB radio family, what can we do as African people across the diaspora? What can we do that will have some meaning in the world? And I don't think we necessarily need to focus on doing or completing a task in 2026, making a profound change in the world. I think we need to embark upon a 15-year plan for getting something done.
Mhm.
yeah, I
I agree.
agree. The challenge is that we find ourselves caught up in a reactionary mode,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that is some of that is necessary because we don't have an anti or a proactive propaganda campaign or platform of our own. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
spend time educating our viewers, our listeners, our readers, and offering different perspectives, different options, different modes of perception management. Because my wife and I were just talking just a few minutes ago, with the technology, with the computer generated images, with AI, the threshold between reality and fakery has diminished. And we're going to see more and more of this kind of hybrid stuff, or even as they move toward total fakery, total falsification. And one of the things, yes, we have to have a long-term strategy to deal with this. But in the meantime, we have to deal with and let our people and educate our people that this is going on in real time.
Mhm. True.
Mm-hmm.
I
Duara?
uh, I came across a very interesting article that I feel is quite inspiring. It's not as culturally aligned to us as a people as I would like, but with that being said, I do believe that it is something, and something during these uncertain times is better than nothing. It's on Zero Hedge. It's called "Back to Our Roots." If baby boomers did it, so can we. And it's basically talking about subsidizing 40% of the nation's fresh vegetables being supplied by victory gardens that were started all around the US. And it we can tie in the veganism and the plant-based eating there. The article goes on to talk about the Maha movement, Make America Healthy Again, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s 2026 agenda for Maha, including revolutionizing the dietary guidelines, defining ultra processed foods, making infant formulas safe, uh, and changing labeling and stuff like that. But this is reminding me as I look at this article. It's and some of the images that are created by AI. It looks like uh, it reminds me of Kuji Chagalia villages in that we one thing we can do is we can grow our own food.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to add that to the discussion, especially it being something that we can control, that
Mm-hmm.
we can do. Yeah.
Question:
I do.
Can we make a list of some of the things that we can control, so that we can see what we have at our disposal, the type of resources we have, so we can begin to think about a long-term strategy?
I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I love that.
Yeah. We should always have that asset list as not just focus on liabilities. Um, One of the things that we can do, and again, I'm talking 15 years down the road, is that we as African people could organize ourselves into a powerful world shaping group, not just in the United States, but the African diaspora as a whole. There are Africans in Europe, in Britain, Africans in Canada, US, the Caribbean, Africans in Central and South America. If we organize as a diaspora with Africa, the continent, as the heart, I think that we can take this in stages and we can leverage that, ultimately determining in partnership with our African on the continent, we can determine the course of the world. We will no longer be overlooked, ignored, and or dismissed as being ineffective and impoverished and unpowerful. I think that that's a worthy pattern for working on. And I have been working on it, and I think I have created a master blueprint for Africans in the diaspora, ultimately taking control, smaller entity first, then larger and larger entities, until finally we've gotten it all together. The first stage of which, though, you frequently talk about, Baba Junius, we've got to create a propaganda machine that can influence our people. We've got to get our identity right.
Mm-hmm.
And if we keep fooling around with this identity question, oh, I'm a Moor, oh, I'm a black
Right.
Hebrew Israelite, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, yeah, if we keep
Right.
fooling around with this identity crisis, we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
stuck in this trap beyond 2040. And at a certain point, it becomes irretrievable to extract ourselves. It may be we've already crossed that Rubicon. I kind of wrote us off in a 2020 book. I can't remember the name of my book. It was called
Fade to
Fade
black.
to black.
Fade to Black, The Passing of a Great Race. But then a year later, I published another book and said, here is the plan. Well, I think I've come up with another plan. Your thoughts about, can we, first of all, recover a collective identity for our people?
The interesting thing is, over the course of our sojourn here, the term they use now is influencers. So who would be our influencers to forge an identity, number one? And number two, there's a lot of groups, individuals who have vested interests in maintaining whatever identity they hold. So, for example, the Moorish temple, they have a vested interest in, what they say that we are. There's some groups who say, well, we're Hebrews. So they have a vested interest in that. So what's the process of us coming together and forging a new identity when it threatens people's position? A lot of these people have positions of authority, that they're tied up to money, and they have, quote unquote, a following or power. So if we're going to do this, how can we come together, and what is the total objective?
Yeah,
It's
that's
great. One of the things is just by saying we're an African people, that was it's still tension today, even after the Black Power and Black consciousness movement of the 60s.
I don't want to speak for anyone, and yet I think the Kanban family is an example of uh, repatriation, which is one option. I've long said that, as far as I'm concerned, and I can be corrected on this, but I feel that there are three main options. One is to stay back here and to fight it out, which personally I think, given this propaganda machine, which Assata Shakur, ancestor Assata Shakur, said runs 365 days a year, 24/7. It's never off. And social media now, with this endless scroll option, or default, really, um, children are now becoming insomniacs because they're just not letting the devices go. So before, children were getting propaganda maybe if they watched television 8 or 6 hours a day. Now they just have 24/7 access. And I would argue that the social media use is probably upwards of maybe 12 hours a day. So with that being said, that's one option. But I don't think that's our best option. The two other options that I can think of are to repatriate to another country that has a predominant African population and that see themselves as African, thus being able to thwart the propaganda by way of communalism and whatnot. And that's kind of like maybe a Kuji Chagalia village idea, starting our own village, right, in another location that is strategically more probable for our survival, even if that means down south in the US. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, the third option that I can think of is to assimilate into a pre-established African culture by marrying in and hoping that you can learn the language and that you will be accepted as an indigenous member. And in societies like Japan and other places, we know that that is very, very hard to do. As a matter of fact, I would argue that in the country of Japan, assimilation is impossible to do. Even if you're a level 4 Japanese speaker and you've lived there for 20 years, it's written in their it's I forget exactly what document it is, but you will never become Japanese. But our people, in our understanding of Ubuntu and all the terms that are associated with that throughout the different cultures and languages, our people are a lot more accepting. And so I think the reality of being able to assimilate into a pre-established culture, to marry into a pre-established culture, is a third option. Those are the three things that I feel, and it's not going to be a large group, as we always say as well. It'll be a small number of people that are able to be of sound mind enough to know when it's time to escape, so to speak.
that was well stated and well thought out.
Thank
To
you, brother.
add to it, I believe that when you stated it's not going to be a lot of us, I think that's a key point that we should maybe start with. How many of us are going to participate? I'm full in it. I'm full in it. You brothers are also full into it as well. There's three of us. If we could find 10 of us, can we begin the plan at that point, or do we need 100 of us?
Well, it depends on what plan we go with, I guess.
The plan I am putting together begins with leverage, concentric circles. Steve Coakley always talked about concentric circles.
Mm-hmm.
That we begin with a group who's absolutely pledged to do the work. And I know so many people, I can name over 100 people absolutely pledged to do the work. Then we convince those to increase the size of the group another tenfold to where we now have, say, 10 beget 100, 100 beget 1,000. And the 1,000 then brings in another 100 members until we have 100,000 people now working together on a program. The 100,000 have answered the question, who am I? To get that question answered, I propose a plebiscite. I don't think, Baba Junius, that our people have ever held a plebiscite in the United States. Is that true? Yes or no?
That's true to my understanding.
Yeah, a plebiscite is and it is more than an election. A plebiscite focuses on answering yes or no to a single powerful question. And I'd say that single powerful question would be centered around our ultimate unity, such as a plebiscite.
I think you're muted, Baba.
You could hear me before. I
No, we
think I
hear
just
you
actually,
now.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I got you.
I just accidentally hit the button. That a plebiscite focuses on a single question, a yes or no answer. I suggested that yes or no question would be centered around a unifying identity. That's step one. If we don't function as a demographic, as an identifiable group with a strict self interest, then the divisions are going to keep coming. They're going to keep us weak, and we will
I
be
agree.
exploited by everyone.
I agree. And I think that if you look at those that have been the most successful, they have been unified around a core common identity. And I would argue also that spirituality and religion kind of multiplies that factor. We can think of the Black Hebrew Israelites that went to Dimona, Israel, whether you agree with that or not. You can think of the Asar Aset Society. You can think of the Nation of Islam. There are many examples of those that are unified, but it's undergirded by what you're talking about, that core identity, which I think is very, very important. Because if not, then you're going to have that tribalism, unfortunately, and I hate that word, but that is so often and prevalent, which pops up. The Kemites start arguing with the Moors, start arguing with the Black Hebrew Israelites, start arguing with you know, the Ifa community, and then you've got American descendants of slaves and all that stuff, and it just, the Rastas, and it all kind of spirals into one big argument about whose truth is and whose identity is realer.
You do mention the Rastas, and when you talk about these communities that have repatriated and created communities, I think it's very important that we do not overlook what the Rastas have done in Ethiopia at, I believe it's called Shashivani.
Yes, yes, I'll say
I
absolutely.
think that's a very good point of, but it's not complete because ultimately, if we're talking about the Rastas, then we have to give legitimacy to the Black Hebrew Israelites, the Black Muslims, and all of the various Christian sects, and then we're right back in the same trap again.
Right, right.
Let me first of all take a second here and say greetings and welcome to our audience today. There's a bunch of us in the house. We have saying greetings for Africa One checking in from the UK. Oseo Kamal checking in. Nguvu Sawabona Shabaka checking in as well. For Africa One says, oh, Queen Mother Kashiba is checking in. All of them whom send greetings to the family. For Africa One says, yeah, first time I'm hearing this. I guess she had not heard about the invasion of Venezuela. And so, does this mean Russia and China may intervene? Apparently not. Not directly intervene militarily, but behind the scenes, we can definitely look to see things happening. I'm going to look to see what will tomorrow's stock exchange opening look like. Will it be chaotic? Will China start moving around assets to demean the dollar more openly than they have been doing already? And Google says, what if China took back Taiwan? Yeah, there's a good likelihood. In fact, China has said,
Hey, they're engaged in a major exercise as we speak.
that's right, that's right. And there is good talk that China may go back and take Taiwan, speed up. They were planning on having Taiwan back in China by 2030. They may just go ahead and upgrade that timetable while the U.S. is deeply involved in this catastrophe that Trump is creating in South America, not just with Venezuela. The catastrophe he's creating with Brazil is in opposition. Colombia is in the danger zone. Panama involved as well. And of course, in
Uh,
Venezuela,
don't forget the
Venezuela is on the
Caribbean.
verge of a civil war.
Don't forget the Caribbean, because part and parcel to this is Cuba. One of the things
That's
that
right.
we need to understand is, yes, oil is a major factor, but so is the Rothschild banking system. So
Mm-hmm.
here again is another country that does not have a Rothschild central bank, and neither does Cuba. So they're in the crosshairs also.
And
Again, while we're talking about building our own infrastructure, and that is a valid goal and objective, we have to continue to augment and educate people about what's going on in the world from an
mm-hmm.
African perspective.
Yes.
That's right. So, and the other big deficit that's affecting us, we don't have a unified media-based propaganda network. It doesn't exist for African people. It was systematically taken apart, destroyed, and replaced. First replacement was with stuff like BET, Ebony, Jet, Essence, and these other kind of African lightweight phenomenal. We looked pretty in our
Yeah.
African garb, but there was no substance there, nothing at all. And so, with lacking a unified propaganda system, a plan's going to have to piecemeal things together. Personally, I would like to be instrumental in the process. And yesterday, I got to admit, yesterday celebrated our 23rd year of completion
Ah,
for
shit.
LIB Radio. 23 years. Today begins our 24th year, and I'm at the point where I've got to decide just how much more invested in LIB Radio. If I can't get any progress going, then I'm gonna have to let it go and change jobs. But that's a whole nother conversation for another time.
Well, but no, it's part of this conversation, because when we talk about propaganda, we talk about uh, mental health, we talk about identity, all these things are connected. Just like on the other side, advertising, PR, perception management, marketing, all fall under the rubric of propaganda for our adversaries. So we have to look at, okay, so what are the problems of a genuinely righteous organization that is attempting to educate and build a foundation within our community? What are the struggles? Well, obviously, sustainability. You're not engaged in the advertising model, which is the predominant model of media, and has been in this country since colonial times, with the broadsheets and the newspapers. So again, our responsibility is not to be doom and gloomers, but to look at those things that are impediments to our goals and objectives. What are some of the things that are impacting us as we speak? because it's obvious a lot of black newspapers have gone under, and all that remain are these they're just shells. They don't really have any analysis. They really don't contribute to our identity. Look at all the internet radio stations that have gone under.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the black owned radio stations, terrestrial radio stations that have gone under. They had a handful of TV stations, they're gone. So to talk in terms of a 15-year program, a campaign, all these things must be taken into consideration. And it's not being a Davy Downer, a doom and gloomer. It's looking at the reality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do we do? First of all, I just want to, if you don't mind, I pulled up a little piece of video. I'm only going to show maybe about 2 to 3 minutes of it. But this Venezuela thing, just to just kind of cap it off, because again, I don't like to talk about things that I can't do anything about. But I have this short piece of video. If you don't mind, with your permission, can I play about 3 minutes of this video called Trump Moves to Take Control of Venezuela's Oil Sector, what it means for global markets and India? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play this if you don't
Billions of
mind.
dollars must be invested to reverse decades of
And
neglect,
mute myself.
sanctions, and underinvestment. Venezuela's oil story is one of extreme contradiction. It holds more proven oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, yet produces a fraction of what it once did. Sanctions, economic collapse, lack of investment, and crumbling infrastructure have left production at historic lows. Trump's plan seeks to reverse this by bringing U.S. oil majors into Venezuela, potentially opening the sector not only to American firms, but eventually to global investors. For India, the immediate impact appears limited. Indian refiners do not currently import Venezuelan crude, and any upward pressure on global prices is expected to be muted. That matters for India, which is the world's third largest crude oil consumer and relies on imports for over 88% of its oil needs. In the short term, there is little risk of disruption. In the longer term, the situation could turn favorable. If sanctions are eased or suspended under a US-backed framework, Venezuelan oil could become sanctions-free and tradable again. That would reopen doors for Indian refiners, particularly Reliance Industries, which was once a major buyer of Venezuelan crude. Before US sanctions in 2019, Venezuela was India's fifth largest oil supplier, exporting nearly 16 million tons of crude annually. India also has significant investments at stake. ONGC Vij, the overseas arm of India's state-owned oil major, has stakes in 2 Venezuelan projects, San Cristobal and Carabobo 1. Together, these projects have over $500 million in unpaid dividends stuck due to sanctions. ONGC has sought U.S. approval to operate under the so-called Chevron model, which allows foreign firms to run projects with special licenses from the U.S. Treasury. Under this model,
You're muted, Baba.
Very important that we look at what they call the Chevron model, which allows U.S. corporations to run foreign assets, such as the oil industry of Venezuela, in the global market. That's very, very important to all of this. This is undeniably about who controls that oil. But here's the thing. Who controls that oil is also directly linked to the petrodollar dominance in the world. And of recent years, China has been encroaching on, and other countries such as Saudi Arabia been talking about ditch the dollar. That's why Saddam Hussein was targeted and thrown out of office. That's one of the major reasons why Muammar Gaddafi was targeted and overthrown and brutally butchered to death. So ultimately, this is another globalist oil cartel operation in my mind. And it also ties into the deepest level of international finance, which we do know is dominated by the Star of David.
Mm.
And
Well said.
understand, notice how many times the voice announcer mentioned the word sanctions.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Sanctions are an act of war,
Absolutely.
particularly when there's a major imbalance in resources, military strength, and the ability to impact allies and alliances. And Keita, you're absolutely right. This is about the petrodollar, which is in collapse, and what we're seeing, even more so, the system is experiencing major tensions. Yes, the Ashkenazim, the Khazars, they're involved, deeply involved in all of this. But the United States had a treasury auction a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and they had very few purchasers. You alluded to the fact that China is ditching a lot of its treasuries, ditching and moving toward changing the board in terms of where they get their oil. So this is a major blow to them, just like the demise of Iraq and Libya, particularly Libya, was to the Chinese. And I suspect that this is going to force a some type of confrontation, either indirect, like you alluded to, Keita, with them ditching U.S. dollars and moving into what the BRICS Plus nations are doing anyway, shoring up their own trade and commerce using currencies other than the United States dollar. They're building up their gold reserves. All of this is happening, and I think this is the Zionists or the Ashkenazim's response to all of this. I may be incorrect, but I think that the world, like I've been saying for years, the world is taking sides, and that side, the Anglo-American Zionist cabal, is not the side that most people want to play with or for, and that's why we're seeing the expansion of the BRICS and the just on Africa. That's why we should cheer what the Sahel is doing, even though they're under relentless attack, because this is part and parcel of the movement of the global chessboard.
Mm-hmm. Dwara?
Yeah, no, I really nothing further I can say about that. Junius covered it. I wholeheartedly agree.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
So,
Keita, one of the things that this also is not covered is the fact that India and China are still predominantly using a lot of coal for their energy sources. So what does that what are the implications for that in the midst of all of this? Keeping
I would,
how they've demonized coal, but now even Trump is talking about bringing coal back.
yeah, I say that's one of the reasons why we as African people need to get our act together. We realize renewable energies are the future. And what does the ancient Chinese riddle say? When is the best time to plant a fruit tree? 20 years ago. When is the second best time to plant a fruit tree? Today. And that if the world does not move toward renewable energy today, we're only delaying something that is absolutely inevitable. And the longer we persist in that delay, the world will be suffering. Now, so we understand Donald Trump's mentality. He don't he doesn't give a hoot about what's going to happen in his grandchildren's generation. He is only concerned about himself, his own ego, etc. And I don't think he's going to be looking much beyond that. Insofar as China, let's be real, China, for all the good China does in the world, China is still one of the biggest polluters in the world. India has aspirations to follow China's course. India is trying to follow China up until the year 2047, when it said India will be fully integrated in the world as a first-class developed nation equivalent to any other nation on the planet. As Africans, we have a choice because we're starting off from such a deficit. The choice we have is to leapfrog. Personally, I don't think Africa should go down the course of nuclear energy to any great extent, although nuclear reactors do exist on the African continent. And if they can be operated to be safe, I think that another 20, 30 years of nuclear reactor activity in produce electricity in Africa will contribute ultimately to the industrialization that we need to put in place. Hey, where in Africa are we manufacturing solar panels? I don't know of any African manufacturing of solar panels. So therefore, that may be one of the early stages, and that's one of the contributions that African Americans, that Africans from the diaspora should make a commitment. Let's go ahead, let's create this Afri-Amer Investment Development Fund, a strategic fund, what do they call it? It's a strategic fund operated by very large groups. Norway has the largest one, sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
The largest sovereign wealth fund on the planet is Norway. It's operating at just under, I believe, $1 trillion, $1 trillion last time I looked. African Americans just spent 135 billion with a B dollars on holiday solutions. There's nothing to stop us from creating a sovereign wealth fund as much as, say, $500 billion. There's nothing to stop us. There's just no plan for it.
There's no plan, and as Baba Junius always reminds us, is the consciousness has to be there as well.
That's first. So maybe we've got to back up and deal with a unifying consciousness. Is a plebiscite possible? Is it probable? Could we do it? Could we pull it off? And is there a single question that we would ask yes or no, say yes or no to this question that would begin our unified identity?
Well, first of all, you have to find the leaders or the influencers to come together and formulate a way how to make this happen, but also then to branch out and do for want of a better word, PR, to get our people on board with it, the whole perception management piece.
Right.
So we see the importance of it and the validity and the legitimacy of it. And also you have to figure out a way to be transparent so that there's no conflicts of interest with the influencers, so that people can see this is righteous, because we're living in a totally corrupt era.
Yeah.
And so once we figure out how to do that and begin figuring out ways to implement it, then we go about it. I'm encouraged because we're generating thought and ideas, and that's good. That's where everything comes from an idea. But we also have to, as I said last week, begin to exhort people to pump them up and get them cheered up and to see our potential, to see what is possible, to expand our vision, and to engender and generate confidence in our people. I mean, when you look at the great things that were done throughout the continent of Africa, not just on the Nile Valley, but throughout the continent, most of our people are not aware of this,
No.
and most of us like, oh, well, so what? That's in the past. What does that have to do with me? It has to do everything with you,
Right. Right.
because that is critical to our survival.
I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where the consciousness comes in, is the fact that not only do you have to have exposure to that type of information, but then you've got to be able to comprehend it and process it and self-reflect on it and to contemplate it and be self-introspective on it. And then you got to be able to implement and act on it in such a way that you know that it can be done again. There's so much in the way of that cognitive process happening. Another article I have, which I'll get into a little bit later, states that TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts, they're also called Reels,
Yeah.
they are damaging the brain at a rate where the medial prefrontal cortex, executive reasoning function of the brain, as we've stated so many other times before, previous weeks, is literally atrophying, which is something that I've heard you, Baba Kitty, talk about, several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are making it very, very difficult for people, especially young people, to make wise decisions. And I would argue that our traditional cultures were rooted in the foundation of life really all being about making wise decisions. So is that the main psyop now, to destroy the brain in such a way that you just behave without thinking, you act out of haste, you poison yourself and are not even conscious of it?
Well, couple the negative effects of the COVID vaccinations, where we're seeing the brain fog, we're seeing the lack of processing in the brain with what you just said, and it's a deliberate attack. It's back to what Dr. Bobby Wright said back in the 60s, menticide,
Menticide.
the deliberate destruction of people's minds, not the brain, although what we're talking about is impacting the human brain and limiting its full capacity and full functioning. They want to destroy us psychologically because they haven't
Mm-hmm.
been able to wipe us out physically. Now they have stepped up with the poisoning of the food and the poisoning, the ecocide. And again, we're getting back to omnicide, omnivore.
Right.
But again, that's why we need this plan. That's why we need to have a coordinated infrastructure for propaganda. We need
Mm-hmm.
propaganda, as Marcus Garvey aptly said.
I think The Repairing and Kujichagulia Villages are two great books written by our Baba Kitty that are launching points for these things that we're talking about in terms of both a plebiscite and a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that
Yeah.
book, Baba, The Repairing, you bring up the term self-reparations. That's really what I feel we're talking about, is
Mm-hmm.
how do we self-repair?
That's right. And I love to think that the books that I have written and published do matter. I would love to believe that. So I'm just gonna complete the statement. I'm gonna put a period right there.
Yeah. Well, they have.
And
They have. Maybe not in the number that we would all like, but they have, and they will continue to.
yeah, they will outlive me, even though I will be living now, according to my latest calculation. I've created the app that's put it all together. I will be living to between 122 and no, between 123 to as much as 128 years of age. As I stay on this discipline that I'm currently on, and I am on this discipline, it is now calculated my longevity. I it's told me that I was a quote unquote elite athlete, especially for my age, and it said that my biological age currently is 45 years old, and that I can expect to live at least to 124. Now, it's taken a lot of work to get to that. It is a lot of work, but it's available for anyone. I put it in the books, Brother Zuara. You've seen it, you read it, you do many parts of it. I put it in the books. Now I've developed a means of calculating how much life expectancy is this expected to create, and it's pretty doggone amazing. So apparently, according to my calculation, I will live to be one of the oldest people on the planet, although we may see the super centenarians far more common by the time I get to about age 115 than we see them today.
I'll say.
So, all of that to say this: plan for tomorrow, act daily, consistently, with ultimate discipline. I think I saw, did I send you guys, I think you saw the video. Did I send you something here recently?
No,
Yeah, I
not
thought I had sent that to you. Let's go through a few of our comments from our listening audience. It's been building up quite a few. Let's begin with Queen Mother Kashiba. Venezuela's oil is sustainable for U.S. refineries located in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. The Koch brothers own these. The gold in Venezuela needs to be stolen as the dollar is not being used by many up-and-coming nations for trade. And that's a good point she's making. We're talking about the petrol-backed dollar is dying, and this may be the last gap. This theft of Venezuela's gold of oil may be the last gasp of that petrodollar. Brother Juma is in the house. Keedy, what was the name of that video? I did put the video back up. The video I played, Trump moves to control of Venezuela's oil sector, what it means for global markets and India. I put that video back up. Gus is in the house. He says, can't a collaboration between LIB and Black Agenda Report be possible? I like that idea of a collaboration. The thing is that I tried to put this together. The brother who has become an ancestors now, can't remember his name. Glenn Ford. Thank you for remembering his name. Well, I got a lot of stuff in my mind.
Well,
Glenn Ford
that's
was
the
a
real deal.
remarkable person. And Glenn Ford was remarkable, but he had terrible health habits. Terrible health habits. And I kind of made the members of Black Agenda Report kind of angry when they made a statement that the gay agenda, the queer agenda, was equivalent to the African agenda. And I rejected that statement outright and rejected without prejudice. And I just told them straight up, no, 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 no. And they kind of turned on me at that point.
yeah.
But I
The
do
other
like the
thing,
idea of collaborating with them. So, Gus, I will reach out. I think Kimberly might be the only one who's still there in place. And I'll
I
reach
think
out
there's
to
one
her.
more. I think there's somebody else.
Yeah, there's a
Uh,
brother as well. And I think he was the
yeah.
one who might have rejected that and might have been flying the rainbow flag.
Well, see,
But,
my issue with them was they were controlled by the leftist ideology.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they were black and they talked about Africa and they did do major coverage of what was going on in Africa.
mhm.
But they rejected any deviation from the leftist point of view. So if you were a Pan-Africanist or you were talking about indigenous knowledge systems or you're talking about Ubuntu or Ma'at, they weren't into that.
No, they weren't. And I am very into that. I have no problem with the leftist, socialist, Marxist position with Africa as a center. I have no problem with that. There were a number of African leaders who felt that way as well, and I do definitely agree. But yeah, but that it means if you start casting away other aspects of Pan-Africanism as illegitimate because of that, no, that doesn't work. I mean, there is a place for capitalism to work, but that Pan-Africanism is the first and foremost flag. And when anything comes into conflict with Pan-Africanism, I disagree with that. Another comment, Nguvu, Kiti, if you have not discussed thorium reactors as an energy source, could you? China is moving in that direction. Yeah, if we got the time, we should look at thorium reactors. Thorium reactors is a much safer technology. The thorium cannot be converted to nuclear bombs and other things. I've looked at thorium 2 or 3 times, and Brother Nguvu, thank you for encouraging me to do that. I do completely agree. Thorium reactors would be the best bet for Africa's future, period. Juma in the house. Oh, she said, I meant, Queen Mother says, I meant up and coming nations in my post. So you're talking about, I guess, the trade between these nations. Juma in the house, he says, South Africa has a growing but still developing solar panel manufacturing sector. Thank you, Brother Juma. Primarily focused on module assembly with limited cell production, which means the cell production is what we really need to get to. But hey, I'm not going to complain. Relying mostly on imported components, mostly from China, while locally producing frames and wires driven by load shedding and energy demand, supported by the government incentives like tax rebates through local assembly capacity struggles. Though local capacity struggles, I do agree. And for Africa One reminds us all, please, if you're out there listening, hit the like button. 7 of us have. A lot more of us are listening than the 7. So please do. Please do. And one more comment. Dr. Arikana took over 700 Afri-Amers to Burkina Faso. Now, that's a large group which could be used as a think tank. Those people were looking for solutions. And I do agree, but unfortunately, the group has never responded to my outreaches. And so therefore, at this particular point, I will continue to outreach to them, but I'm very disappointed that they never responded, even when I wanted to give them a bunch of free books of my book. The book was The Blackest Soil, Africa Can Feed the World, and never heard back from him. I believe that Dr. Arikana is protected by a clique of Afri-Amers who kind of want to keep her to themselves.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I do love Dr. Arikana, and I plan to be able to get in contact with her once I again contact PLO Lumumba. I'm expecting to be back in his office again later this year, and hopefully I got to find out what he thinks about her, because I really don't know. I'm just presuming they're on the same team, but it doesn't always happen. But Dr. PLO Lumumba, he is, in my mind, the voice of Marcus Garvey in this time.
I say.
A few more comments have come in. I do see in the YouTube page, Eddie is in the house. Reports say overall crime in the U.S. was down 20% in 2025. I'm sure that didn't happen in the last 3 months of the year when Trump set ICE and National Guard on U.S. cities. What do you all think? Has U.S. crime down? Well, I personally, just to answer it real quick, crime has been going down. The question was, how did it get so high in the first place? And is now falling down to its natural high, but it was crazy high during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, especially in our neighborhoods. and still persistently it persists in our neighborhoods. Junius, did you want to weigh in on that, or Dwara?
One of the reasons, just say it is down. The last mayoral election in Philadelphia, a sister, Sherelle Parker, was running against obviously several white men. She's from the community. She was had been a state rep. She was a council person, and she would go around having these town meetings, and the people were up in arms, telling her that our communities were under siege, and demanding that she do something and make that a part of her platform and her campaign. So once she came in, that was a part of her campaign, but there were several outrageous attacks, shooting sprees, and what have you. So they made a concerted effort to crack down, to clamp down, crack down, and find, arrest, and prosecute those people who were involved in those open air shootings, or even what they did when they cleared out Kensington Avenue with the drugs and what have you. Now, a lot of them just dispersed to other places, but still, the short-term answer is there was a concerted effort to deal with it. They had intelligence on who were the main perpetrators, who were the people, repeat offenders, and once they dealt with them, plus Eric Krasner, who's the DA, had a label of being soft on crime. They put pressure on him and even threatened to run people against him. So he somewhat changed his position. And just from Philadelphia, those are some of the reasons that crime is down. Ideally, it would be because there's been a change of consciousness, but we can't comment on that because we can't prove it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point you make. Dwyer, did you want to comment?
No, I don't really have anything to comment on that per se, only because I'm not as well versed in the statistics of that. I did see one article that said that they tried to blame Democrats for skewing the statistics on crime, but I didn't get a chance to read it.
Mm-hmm.
My only thought is that I feel like a lot of people are spending more time at home and more time online. And, what do I know? But that is something that I am paying attention to. It seems like 20 years ago, shoot, maybe even 6 years ago, people were spending a lot more time in social settings, and this rugged individualism, this self-imposed isolation is quite concerning to me. I have a lot of friends and family members, and just reading the pulse of the community that I'm in, it seems like we're all pretty well, not all, but a lot of us are sheltered in place. And
Well,
Mhm.
but that's the result. Excuse me
please.
for interjecting, but that's one of the consequences of the COVID psyop.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yes.
I will
I
say
agree.
this much. Going back way before COVID, when crime was at such a high rate, I refer back to a study done by the Pew Charitable Trust Fund that says income disparities are always associated with an increase in capital crime.
Yes.
And when we look at the divide between the haves and have-nots, especially in a consumer-oriented market, constant propaganda, consume, 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 we can go back to looking at the beginning of this latest wave of income disparity, and it's been growing since the Ronald Reagan era. And since Ronald Reagan era, we did see an increase in capital crimes, and also the drug wars do fuel huge amounts of capital crime. So you're looking at justification for why crime was so high. It had to do with income disparity and the drugs, the war against the people using
Yeah.
drugs as a weapon of mass destruction.
I believe.
Also, coming out of that, look at the media.
Mm.
Look at the role that the media played, going from, say, the 50s, where you had clear demarcations of good guys, bad guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then you had the anti-heroes in the 60s and 70s, the Clint Eastwood and those kind of movies.
And
To move,
Scarface.
then moving into the hardcore crime
Mm-hmm.
thing, particularly with gangster rap. Once
Mm.
you had that violence against each other and the promotion of crime, look at the popular series. What was that popular series that was on Fox?
And was it Empire?
Empire,
Mm.
right? They didn't accumulate. They didn't get their capital through mortgages or cashing in their 401ks. It was
Right.
based on drugs.
Right.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
telling people, oh yeah, this is the way you do it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Good point you make. I did see a comment from For Africa One said, Kitty, you missed my earlier comment. I went back and I found it. She said, Brother Kitty, Medase P for your unstinting commitment and application of your intellect and wisdom to serving our global community over the past 23 years. Respect. And I do receive that. And thank you for reminding me to read that on the air, beloved. You know, it is service to a beautiful people who are deserving of the best that I can do. And I'm going to continue to do the best that I can. Yet I have to decide, is the best that I can do still doing something that seems to be antiquated, or should I switch careers? That's the decision I'm making right now. So thank you for your compliment as well.
I just want to make a comment. You're constantly talking about raising the bar, doing the best that you can.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a society where mediocrity and incompetence, and to a certain degree, what's it called? Entitlement are
Mm.
the norm. So when this is all part of a cultural campaign, part of the culture wars and the counterculture that goes against the type of values that we espouse, that we were socialized with when we were coming up, that's also a reason why we're in the situation we're in, because that type of mindset, that type of degeneracy gets rewarded in the predominant culture. And being pro-black, being pro-African does not.
I would
Mm-hmm.
I would add on to that, and it is definitely related. So I'm not saying this in competition, but to add on is when the propaganda, when the psyop can get us, can get the overwhelming majority of us locked into this victim mentality, this victimhood, then it just becomes complain, 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 poor me, poor us. And I think it hinders our ability to see beyond our supposed powerlessness.
Mm-hmm. Good point you make. Good point you make. That wandering, wallowing in our litany of miseries only makes the smell of the wallowing all the more tolerable. I'm going to kind of leave it at that because I almost got nasty. And I did just post up for our listening audience in a Rumble. I wanted to show you an example. And brothers, I hope you click the link as well. And don't watch it now, watch it later. But this is about a 6.5 minute video, which I have been putting these videos, silently putting them on my YouTube page, talking about my health protocol. And it says the 120-year-old human, my plan to live to a healthy lifespan. And I did talk about that healthy lifespan. As much as 124 to 128 years is expected, with viability beyond 115. Now, it showed me a chart of this. Not, it may not be on the video, but the chart shows a steep decline right around 118 years. And that's about the period where I will start to decline. Of course, it's an exponential curve. It's a steep decline, but it does take another 10 years before that decline goes to zero. But to be viable, to be doing 100 to as many as 700 push-ups a day at age 110, 115, yeah, I don't think any of us would reject that. Some people see old age, super centenarian age, as being frail and unable to
Yeah,
walk or
feeble.
talk or move
Yeah,
like that. But
yeah.
my friend Wendy Ida, who hopefully I'm trying to get her to come on the program. If you're ever familiar with Wendy Ida is herself my senior citizen, and she is stunningly energetic and absolutely beautiful. But she says she speaks with her father daily. Her father is 100 years old. He still drives himself. He can still run, and he's very, very much alert. So here is an example of a black male living to become a centenarian who is absolutely all of his faculties are with him. He is undeniably an example for all of us.
Shay,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we need as many of those. That's part of the propaganda, because we're always, if you take a look at the way we're portrayed in the media nowadays, most of us are obese. Some are morbidly obese, and that reflects the reality. But it's also a programming incentive to keep us in the caught up in the grip of maladaptive culture, eating, uh, lack of nutrition, and everything else. So we need to keep that in mind, because we're talking about propaganda. Remember, we're constantly under attack
Hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
images, with content, with programming, with just the wording itself. Just an example of it, just getting back to what we started in the beginning of the program. Just look at what all the media is saying about Trump's invasion of Venezuela, the language that they're using, and then the justification and rationale for all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A few comments on the YouTube. Flying Guillotine is in the house. He's talking about the invasion of Venezuela. He says, this could be great for the stock market. This could be great for BRICS as well. And he said, nuclear waste in Africa doesn't sound safe. And again, we're talking about thorium is a different type of nucleus than the fission or fusion or fission nuclear power generation that was previously been publicized. And he said a plebiscite is a good idea. And I highlighted the following. Has a reparations plebiscite ever been discussed? I So I don't know that it has been discussed.
There was a group, not in Cobra, but another group. The brother's last name is Ansari. I think he was proposing one, but I don't think it ever came to pass. It didn't manifest. At least it didn't
Mm-hmm.
manifest to the level that he was proposing.
Mm-hmm. He said a lot of reels are packed with potent thoughts and ideas as well. I think he means the shorts. All reels, however, AI reels, however, flood the internet. And you're absolutely right. The AI reels are flooding the internet. But as I'm now generating AI videos and other things, they don't have to be fake news. They don't have to be reels that only are there to suck us in and have us click the links and watch and watch and watch, tantalize us, tease us with their untruths. They actually can use AI, African ancestral intelligence, can be used to generate things that are transformative. That's what I am using AI for. Others have called it ancestral intelligence, and I think that's a good way to us to refer to what we would do with it.
My only pushback to that comment, respectfully, about the reels being packed with potent thoughts and ideas. According to this article that I pulled up, which is based on a study called "TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts Induce Measurable Brain Rot."
Mm-hmm.
Here's just a very short list of what these platforms deliver in terms of rapid bursts of artificially rewarding stimuli, creating a cycle of constant cognitive overstimulation. The brain never enters a rest mode or deeper thought state. So, are you really getting the content of the information in those reels and shorts? A weakening of the working memory. Information is consumed too quickly to be consolidated. So, my argument would be that these things are so fast and flashy and rapid and quick that, according to medical doctors, scientists, the information is not even being retained nor consolidated by the brain. And then fragmented attention networks, short form content trains the mind to expect constant novelty. That's why the
Mm-hmm.
children are now saying they're bored, and they don't even want to read because it's become too difficult for them to have that sense of pace and time. Difficulty processing long or complex information. Couple more. Deep reading and sustained focus become neurologically harder because of these shorts and reels. Mental fatigue and reduced executive function, which we mentioned earlier. Chronic overstimulation taxes the prefrontal cortex, the center of planning, reasoning, and self-regulation. And lastly, the study describes this as a shift from healthy top-down cognitive control to bottom-up dopamine-seeking impulsivity.
Wow, that seemed to be rather comprehensive, and I've done taken a look at all of those that you mentioned, and it is true. The short form videos do overstimulate these particular sectors, and they are addictive. They are addictive, and any type of addictive behavior, we got to look very, very hard at it. Should it be discarded? I will admit I'm addicted to longevity and all of the sciences to that, but personally, I don't see it as detracting from my ability to relate inside of a healthy community of people. But I
Right.
do agree with everything you say. Artificial intelligence does detract away from that. Ancestral intelligence complements, in my mind, our collective progress.
Exactly.
But see,
The
one of the
application of ancestral intelligence, I should say.
right,
put
but
the
that's the whole functioning of what I call dual hemispheric functioning of our brains,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the use of the right hemisphere with intuition and creativity and all that goes into what what help create and what is an outcome of Ubuntu and Ma'at.
right.
This stuff that we're being subjected to now is the very opposite of that,
Mm-hmm.
where it's taken away focus, taken away concentration. It is an alternative to meditation and that whole getting introspection and going within,
Right.
because we're that stimuli and that hypeness, which not only is it a form of addiction, it's a form of psychopathy. When you look at what are the traits of a psychopath, one of them is to have this constant urge to be doing things that are negative, and they have no remorse. So again, all of this is reconditioning the brain. Some people say rewiring it. I'm just saying it's reconditioning it because of the hormones and the physiological responses of people when they get caught up and mesmerized by this stuff. And it extremely harmful.
I put
Hmm.
the name of the study up in the private chat. Perhaps, Bobby, you could put that in the comments if anyone's interested in doing the deep dive.
Okay, I'll have to give me a second. I have to go find it.
It's in
Private
the
chat
private.
here, I do
Yeah,
see. You also had a comment for baby boomers, back our roots,
yeah, that was the
baby.
Victory Gardens,
That was a zero hedge thing about going back to the 40s.
growing our own food.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point. And then the one from the Focal Points Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, thank you. That's a very important study. Of course, studies can verify that our behaviors are bad for us, but people keep doing it.
Yeah,
I put up a study of what my personal plan to live to a healthy longevity. I put that up as a link as well. Again, people don't click on that right now. I don't want you to deviate away from us until the end of the program. But it's there, it's available. It's really strict, it's really detailed. But at the same time, I am proving that it is doable. And I am not the only one proving that it is doable. Even though, according to the chat that I use, and it has at this point learned my personality and learned what I am and what I do, I am on the absolute cutting edge. It's telling me that at current rate, I would live to be the oldest man, black man, the oldest man on the planet.
mm, mm.
So that means this program is 99.9% plus focused and determining. And I'm always open for new routines, new things that I can do that would add to this longevity. If either of you have any suggestions of things you do, or maybe if you could be my guinea pig, I'll send you a questionnaire and then input your inputs into it. And based upon what you do, the questionnaire should output how long you can expect to live. The more higher our number gets, I think the more we are encouraged to discipline ourselves inside this lifestyle.
That sounds like something, Baba, that you could package in a book and consider it some sort of a longevity calculator if you haven't already done that.
It's it's in 5 or 6 of my books. There's Living Superfood Life,
That's
Living
right.
Superfood Longevity,
Longevity. Yeah.
100 plus lifespan.
Hmm.
It's in Furiously Vegan,
Okay.
and it's in the recipes books as well. So I have done it multiple times, and it's just a matter, really, at a certain point, of others just buy the books.
Right.
The books
Right.
are how I make my living. If you don't buy the books, you don't know what's in it. You don't know what I do. Unless I
Hmm.
tell you, unless you listen to every day to LIB Radio, then I have told you. But buy the
Well,
books.
the one other comment I wanted to make is that it sounds like that's another thing we can add to the list that I'm kind of tabulating in the background about what we can control.
Mm-hmm.
And our longevity, although none of us know where we're going to die, how we're going to die, and when we're going to die, we do have some control over how long we live based on these practices, given, given an accident or something like that does not happen. But yeah, I'm going to add
Yeah.
that to the list. We
Yeah.
can be in control of our longevity.
That's right.
The other
And
thing we can add to our list is is make the choices that we make.
Yes.
Choices in
mm-hmm.
terms of our food, nutrition, the choices to be discerning and discriminating, because we've been brainwashed to believe that discrimination is bad. And sometimes it is when it's based on bias and prejudice and ignorance. But when it's based on natural curiosity and a willingness to learn and to discern truth from falsehood and to improve not only your health but in terms of the the quality of your life, it becomes very important. And within
Mm-hmm.
that part of discernment, you have to think about what we're being programmed. Because again, the demarcation between fakery and reality or deceit and truth is being blurred daily on a constant basis, and we need to be up on it. We need to be sharp and aware of what's going on, and keep in mind that think tanks, white papers put out by our adversaries is all part of their campaign against us, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them, they're just intellectual mercenaries just putting out propaganda. So we have to use discernment and discrimination.
That's right. And today is Sunday. Of course, we're nearing the end of the football season, but it's Sunday and the football season is getting intense. I think a lot of our people will be particularly attracted to it, as well as a lot of people from other ethnicities. But the thing about it is, think about the commercials, the
Mm-hmm.
programming.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of any of these commercials are good for us that are good for us during the football games? I can't think of any.
No.
Yeah, from the advertiser and from the bean counters and the financier's point of view, the programming is designed to attract people to the advertising,
That's right.
which is the basis for their bottom line.
That's
That's
right.
why commercials on the Super Bowl will cost hundreds of or even millions of dollars,
Right.
because media, from their perspective, is to make money from it, which is why venues like LIB struggle, because we're not part of that advertising model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens with black media. And it's happened to us since 1827 with Freedom's Journal.
I
Mm-hmm.
forget. Excuse me. I forget who said it, but imagine if the Super Bowl commercials were filled with advertisements for fresh organic fruits and vegetables, for meditating and exercising and growing your own food. Imagine that, and that really is what LIB is. And then Baba Kitty, you said something a long time ago that always stuck with me, and that's that every billboard, every commercial, every advertisement is a set of instructions that is
Mm.
telling you what to do, what to wear, who to love, who to like, who to be intimate with, who not to be intimate with, what to drink, how how you are going to be perceived as in terms of status in this culture. It's an assault on the mind in a way that I wish more of our people could comprehend, because most most people I know, the TV's always on, the smartwatch is now on the wrist, the cell phone's pinging and buzzing and blipping and beeping, and it's like Baba Junior said, the attention is our vital energy and attention is being stolen from us. Instead of going within through either meditation or prayer or just lying down in a dark room on your bed and thinking about your life and your day, will give you within 30 minutes the answers to half of your problems. But the distraction and the stealing of the focus, everything is being sucked out of us to give our souls to these screens and this what I call Isfetian stimuli.
I say, I say. And therefore, we must resist.
I'd say.
We must constantly resist, never give up, never relent. We do resist.
I'd
Um,
say.
do we have any other stories that we had brought for today's study here on LAB Radio?
Yeah, I have a couple. Um,
Same here.
uh, DRC and Liberia are new non-permanent members of the UN Security Council. They'll hold that status for 2 years. So that's something to keep in mind and think in terms of how they set up the UN, how with the exception of Russia and China, the permanent members were the colonial and neo-colonial powers. So that still continues because they're permanent members. And also, Mali and Burkina Faso have banned U.S. citizens in response and retaliation for Trump's travel restrictions. And as a result, the U.S. and Sahel tensions are intensifying. In addition to Mali and Burkina Faso, Trump also banned Niger, South Sudan, and Sierra Leone for full ban, and he has partial restrictions on Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and Tanzania. So this shows that there is tension and a malintent toward Africa, a significant number of African nations. So we need to keep that in mind, particularly when he's bombing Nigeria, Somalia, and who knows where else.
Mm-hmm. Good point you'll make.
Um,
Dwyer, you said you brought some stories?
yeah, I have a couple of articles up. One is from Slay News, December 26th. It says researchers warn early smartphone use linked to rising depression, obesity, and sleep disorders amongst young people. The pediatrics analysis of more than 10,000 adolescents found that early smartphone ownership correlates sharply with higher risks of depression, obesity, and chronic sleep problems. And the younger kids receive their first device, the worse the long-term outcome appears. I have also an article from Good News Network. I try to find good news whenever I can to offset a lot of the other stuff that's permeating our news feeds these days. This one is from December 28th, 2025. A rare cancer-fighting plant compound has finally been decoded. And it talks about this thing called mitrophyllene. Is part of a small and unusual family of plant alkaloids, molecules that are defined by their distinctive twisted ring shapes. Reminds me of our natural hair. And spirulina, that divine spiral, which help give them their powerful anti-tumor and anti-inflammatory effects. So this I will also send you in the private chat because I think it's something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, that definitely would be something I'm interested in.
And I just put that up. And then lastly, let's see what else I have here is 1 week break from social media slashes depression and anxiety, another study found. So that's kind of both ends to that. And then I also have lung cancer, ? Alarming study finds ultra-processed foods are even worse than previously thought. That's from Zero Hedge. Another interesting article, Beijing wants babies, condoms, contraceptive drugs hit with double-digit tax to boost birth rate. And it goes into talking about how Somalia now has the world's highest fertility rate, with Chad and Niger right underneath in the second and third place. And then third place is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Fifth place, Central African Republic. Sixth place, Mali. Then Angola. Then Burundi. Then Afghanistan. Then Mozambique. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 10. 9 out of the 10 world's highest fertility rates are currently in Africa.
Now we correlate that chart, which is impressive, to the nations with the highest rate of maternal mortality, meaning women dying during the act of bearing and birthing a child. It's almost overlap. And if
Wow.
you look at the nation with the lowest rate, Belarus, with one death per 100,000 live births, and compare that to South Sudan, 1,223 deaths per 100,000 live births. Not just having the babies, we can do a much better job of protecting the life of the baby's mothers.
Indeed. Indeed.
And I've talked about this many times. There doesn't seem to be any traction in that, but I'm not going to relent talking about that. On my Pan African health agenda, that is undeniably one of the top 10 things that we would do.
Indeed.
Protect their lives. And it's not going to be that expensive. It's not going to be that expensive at all. We just got to import a little bit of technology. I've talked about buying used portable ultrasound machines. They're going to cost, probably now with the inflation, probably going to cost for upwards of $4,000 a piece. Use portable ultrasound, and that can be used to reduce this rate of women dying during childbirth, especially if a woman dies during her first birth of a child. Then that takes out all the children she would have had in a lifetime.
Right. Right. And that's certainly a much better idea than what Bill Beelzebub Gates is always throwing around as his reason for why Africa has is overpopulated in his words,
In
not
his
mine.
words,
And I
Africa is
disagree.
actually underpopulated. When you talk about
Ashe.
population density, Africa is
Ashe.
underpopulated. No doubt about that at all. One
Ashe.
question is on the table. I think it may take us the rest of the program to completely discuss it. Queen Mother Kashiba, Israel and Somaliland, question mark. Why? Israel has, of course, just inserted itself into Somaliland, recognizing it as separate, carved off republic from Somalia. Of course, this goes back to the Berlin Conference when the Europeans carved up all these borders, and the French wanted a piece of land near that strategic route of the Upper Red Sea. So that was when Somaliland was carved off of Somalia. But Somaliland is not recognized by any other African Union states. Only Israel and I think maybe 3 other nations around the planet recognize Somaliland.
In fact, we mentioned that last week, the African Union, and I think there were several other nations that denounced Israel for their recognizing and their so-called cooperation, where they stress full support for their sovereignty and unity, when in fact, really, it's a disputed territory within Somalia. One of the things that's coming out is that part of the negotiations, the pro quid pro type of thing, is that they want to use or convince Somaliland to accept Gazans and Palestinians,
Right.
because the Israelis are going to increase, and this is a prediction for 2026, they're going to increase the genocide and ethnic cleansing in that region. And those who survive, they're going to offer places like Somaliland for relocation.
The other thing I read too was that, and I have not confirmed this yet because apparently Somaliland is saying that this isn't true, but sources are saying that they're going to accept Somaliland into the Abraham Accords, as well as putting an Israeli base in Somaliland, which I can't think of a worse decision to make.
Well, keep in mind they're planning for mutual trade, and they promise to support Somaliland's sovereignty, which means that it's going to bolster its so-called security and military against its neighbors and so-called territorial integrity. So they're going to offer a carrot that some of these breakaways who have formed Somaliland will will more than likely accept, because it offers them legitimacy in the eyes of the world, where most of people just said, okay, this is a dispute that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, I think it's going to be possibly treated just like Djibouti is for the U.S., in that it'll be used to basically attack the nations that surround it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, staging ground and launching pad for
Exactly.
their mischief in the area.
Well, we do see that Somalia is a member of the East African community. It is the eighth partner after the DRC joined. And I have put forward, even though we haven't talked about it in some time, it's unfortunate, that ultimately the EAC, East African community, would also incorporate Ethiopia and Djibouti as members as well. So, from the standpoint of Pan African future, and this future would include federalizing this into one of the six most populous nations on the planet. It would be in the Somaliland's best self interest to stay African. Could it be, though, that their situation is so broken down that they are just desperate for any kind of a friend who would acknowledge them?
Yeah, they're desperate because their intention is to break away and have a self-governing sovereign nation, and thus far they have not gotten the recognition from the African Union or any of their neighbors. And so here we have the Ashkenazim coming along, and of course they never do anything out of the goodness of their heart, so you know that there's some kind of incentive and benefit that they will get from it. And given their history, when they benefit, usually a whole lot of other people suffer.
Mm-hmm. Queen Mother Kashiba writes, what critical natural resources does Somaliland have? Ethiopia wants to have a port or access to the sea through Somaliland. What happened to that idea? And yeah, Ethiopia it is a landlocked status. It's looking to create a railway link. In fact, the Chinese are building it right now. A railway link between Addis Ababa and the capital of Djibouti, which is, I think, Djibouti. There's the Berbera port developing a partnership. Ethiopia has invested in the Berbera port in Somaliland, aiming to use it as an alternative to Djibouti. And the Lamu port, Ethiopia is looking at the Lamu port for potential trade routes and has signed agreements to enhance cooperation. So Ethiopia is looking to create 3 ports to the Red Sea, or the Lamu port would be directly to the African Ocean, so-called Indian Ocean. So it would definitely increase the value of trade in Africa, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Here's a place, the AFCFTA, where Ethiopia could be invested in to create these trade routes. That sounds like I'm coming back to my plan for Afri-Amers to invest themselves into our continental future. Now, according to the plan I'm writing right now, I say we propose by starting with a country we can feel safe in, a country that's already developing very rapidly, and that country is Rwanda. But beyond Rwanda, I think Ethiopia is a great, great opportunity for us as well. I have a good friend, Brother Yao, who's invested in Ethiopia and investing in Ethiopia, and he is doing fantastic.
Well, that's part of what we mentioned earlier about two things. One is creating a list of like-minded collaborators, and to widen that Kuji Chagalia circle, for which is what I'm calling it for now, I guess. And the other is repatriation and and investing on the continent in such a way that it's not just economic investing, but you're investing social capital in a place that you can also call home. I think so many of our people have been brainwashed, and I hear this all the time. I'm always fighting this sentiment, and I know you Babas will be able to relate, is that continental Africans don't want to have anything to do with Afri-Amers. I call bull donkey on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Show me the evidence they don't. I will show you 10 times what you show me. I'll show you 10 times that evidence, including personal testimonies that shows it's just the opposite. They want everything to do with us. They just seem to have a hard time figuring out who are we and where do we
Yes,
want to go with our future. We can't even
exactly,
figure that out.
exactly. So much of our traditional virtues have been ripped from us that we don't even have the humility these days to reach out a hand to some of our continental brothers and say, hey, listen, you and I, we're brothers. You and I, we're sisters. You and I, we're family. And, it's long been said, and I've proven that in all my travels, is that you take one step towards trying to relate to someone through their culture, they'll take 5 steps towards you.
That's right. Two more stories I want to just quickly squeeze in. The story from Kenya. Kenya on alert after the World Health Organization flags fake kidney transplant injections. This from allafrica.com. And it states Kenya's Pharmacy and Poisons Board has issued a public alert warning against falsified Simulect, which is also called Basiliximab, an injectable immunosuppressive drug used to prevent kidney transplant rejection. First of all, the idea of kidney transplant rejection, we got to change our fundamental understanding of what is chronic kidney disease. I state without hesitation, chronic kidney disease is reversible, but you got to catch it in time before the damage goes so far. People don't need the transplants. They don't need this kidney rejection drug that the Kenyan Poison Board has now isolated from contributions to Kenya from other countries. And the last point, Sudan war now nears 1,000 days, reaches catastrophic levels, and we can say that again and again. What is happening in Sudan should never, ever, ever be tolerated by any humane group of people anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and you're seeing the outcomes of that, the refugees, the horrific and horrible conditions that this conflict is bringing about. And you're absolutely right. There doesn't seem to be the traction in the global or even the U.S. media or even amongst our own people to address this and link with each other to at least offer some venues for humanitarian aid. I mean, that's the least we could do.
Mm-hmm. Couple more comments, and I'm going to close the comments out right after Eddie gets in two more. He says, can you explain how Somalians were being found to be stealing funds from the Minnesota public school system when the PPP groups have openly chartered private schools using federal funds? Are public schools close to being closed down or becoming a pay-based system? And if so, will taxers see a cut? Well, you have to look to understand the depth of that story about the Somalians stealing from the U.S. federal government. You got to go back to the stories that come from, I believe it might have been Springfield, Ohio, where African refugees were eating their dogs.
No, the Haitians. It was the Haitians.
The Haitians were eating their dogs. Thank you. And the Haitians, of course, are African refugees as well. They have as much credibility. They're coming from the same source.
Also, when you stop to think of American foreign policies towards Somalia, they're not separate and distinct. This story, and I raised that question a couple of weeks ago, is there a connection between this so-called fraud, which is virtually impossible? I'm not saying that it's not fraud, but it's virtually impossible without major white involvement. It's no different than the Medicaid and Medicare fraud that goes on. That is because of the insurance companies, the doctors, and the hospitals that are ripping
Mm-hmm.
off, and the nursing homes that are ripping off Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's not black people. There might be a couple of them in there, but for the most part, it's white folks.
That's right. We've come to the end of the program. Thank you all for all your comments, all your contributions. I'm going to have to move on because I have a couple of appointments coming up very, very shortly. Final thought you want to get in for today's mastermind, Brother Dwyer?
I'm gonna say holistic health, holistic health, holistic health. This is the most important aspect of our life, so we need to start making healthier choices and decisions and behaviors today. If we don't have our health, really, we don't have anything. And as ancestor Baba Kamal Kamban said, we need healthy warriors. We can't deal with sick warriors. We need healthy warriors out here. Ashe.
Ashe. I do completely agree. Baba Junis, your final thoughts for today's program?
My final thought is to our listeners and viewers and those who are familiar with LIB Radio, if you value this venue, then support it. Support it any way you can, by any means you can. Tell a friend, promote it, or make a financial contribution. Because one of my predictions for 2026 is that so-called freedom of speech is going to be under vicious attack from not only the government, but also these ideologues who are out here. And we need all the vehicles to peel back the onions and explore and encourage a thought, free thinking, and critical thinking that we can.
I completely agree. And thank you so much, Baba Juniors, for reminding the people that it's on us. We take responsibility for our future, and our future should undeniably include living in black. So
by the way, next week I won't be here. I have a family engagement, so we won't be here.
All right. Well, we'll miss you. We will miss you. Dwara, will we miss our brother?
We definitely will. We definitely
All
will.
right. So hopefully we'll be back with you soon enough. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you, from our listening audience, from LIB Radio, from yours truly. It has been a joy. It's been a pleasure. And on that note, we are out of here for today. Do stay tuned, because all day Sunday we replay the best of our family around the internet radio. And I will be playing from the Black Agenda Report. So do be a part of everything we do here on your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are living in black.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.